Many late diagnosed neurodivergent adults go through life feeling different, but not really knowing why. Today, we're going to do a real session exploring just that. My name's Amy Peters. I'm a neurodivergent therapist based in Kent in the UK. Now, what you're going to see today is a real session between me and Lisa, who's kindly agreed to be filmed, exploring her neurodivergence. She's a late identifying neurodivergent person, and she's just working through what it means to her to be neurodivergent and looking back at her experiences through that neurodivergent lens. Now, the idea of the session today is this isn't a therapy session, but we would use tools and practices like this within a therapy session, but it's to give you an idea of what neurodivergent affirming really is. To help us, we're going to use my Neuro Cards. So these are therapy cards designed to explore neurodivergence in a really affirming, non-pathologizing way. So you'll see us using them through some of the session to get a clearer idea of what neurodivergence means to Lisa. So I know, Lisa, that you're here today because you wanted to have a think about neurodivergence and kind of explore what that means for you. And I'm just wondering, first of all, what really brings you here and where you might want to start.
Yeah, I think before I started working with you, which is just over a year ago now,
Yeah.
I I suppose I'd heard the term, say for instance, ADHD. I'd heard the term, and in my mind, it meant certain things. It meant, oh, you can't concentrate, or you've got no attention span, or whatever. And jokingly, I probably said things like, oh, yeah, maybe that's ADHD or whatever, seeing things in myself. But for the most part, I had no awareness of really what it meant until I started working with you. And I didn't really understand neurodivergence as a whole either. And not to say that working with you has made me paranoid. That would be the wrong thing. But it's just really made me have these sort of aha moments where I've just thought, gosh, that might be me. That makes a lot of sense. Or gosh, that's me, I've done that. And I've just sort of had these little moments of clarity. And in a nutshell, I would say actually becoming more aware of what it means to be neurodivergent and have that sort of difference. It's actually made me quite sort of more forgiving of myself, I suppose, because like going right back to sort of primary junior school, I would have noticed things, and I remember things that happened there. And actually, I'm thinking, I wonder if it was that. I wonder if it was neurodivergence. I wonder if it wasn't just me being a daydreamer. I wonder if it wasn't, these things. And there's just like a lot of it has sort of come to the surface. And as we've talked, I've maybe run a couple of things by you, but because we're usually working, I haven't done that. I just thought it'd be really interesting to have a chat about some of these things and just sort of ask questions or shed some light on some of this stuff, really, and just in the hope that it might be interesting for somebody else watching, really.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think it would be because there's that looking back that you're doing now. It's like that inkling of, oh, okay, maybe I'm neurodivergent. And actually what happens is for many of us who are late diagnosed, like me, we then end up looking back on all of that. And it's like this uncovering of realizations. And sometimes it's kind of light bulb moment upon light bulb moment because it's realizing, okay, so like you say, maybe there's something that I can be more accepting of myself as I look back at those things when I put it through the neurodivergent lens in that way. So it sounds like that's what you're doing. And yeah, absolutely. It'll be lovely to explore. And I really appreciate you being happy to be filmed and happy to be here for other people that hopefully they'll get something out of this too, and really see how the neurodivergent affirming approach can really help. And it's that alternative to the way we've seen ADHD, for example, in the past?
Yeah, yeah. So I made a list, and it was quite interesting actually making the list, because it's kind of in chronological order from, school, junior school and secondary school, going through exams, first jobs, working life. It's just like, it's just really interesting to see, some of the things that I've struggled with. So I kind of would be interested to know if you've got any insights on that, because some of them I'm not even sure really irrelevant, but they might be irrelevant, but maybe you can just say, well, that wouldn't necessarily be neurodivergence, but I'm sure there are some things that are.
Yeah, definitely we can. So Lisa, like, where would you like to start? Give me an example of something that's come up for you as you've been kind of exploring it.
Yeah. So when I was, I'd say when I was at junior school, I used to, I used to copy people all the time. I would like copy the way they wrote. So I copied their handwriting. I would copy the way they sat in a chair. Sometimes I copy the way that they talked. And I know, like, kids want like the shoes that somebody else has got and stuff like that. But for me, it was like another level. And I honestly feel that a lot of that came from not really knowing my own identity. I didn't really know who I wanted to be. It was almost like I was trying on other people's identities because I preferred theirs to mine. Does
Mm,
does that make sense?
complete sense, yeah. And were you aware at the time of what was happening? And what story did you tell yourself about why you were doing
Mm.
it?
I think I would find things about my friends, for instance, that I would just like. I would just really like the way that they were presenting in the world, and I wanted to be more like that. And I don't know if that's because I felt that being myself wasn't enough, or was weird, or was something. I don't know really how I felt about it, but there was definitely an element of they're better than I am because they do things this way, or their writing's nicer than mine, or the way they dress is better than me. And I think maybe there's just feeling of maybe obviously insecurity, I can imagine, underneath all of that. But yeah, and I think they would notice. I mean, how would they not notice? Do you know what I mean?
Mm, yeah. So it felt noticeable.
I would say so. Yeah, really obvious. Because one
Mm.
minute in my school books, I would be writing one way, and then it would be almost like somebody else completely had taken over my work.
So it's like taking on other people's mannerisms, personalities,
Mm,
maybe body language even, and things like that,
yeah,
that maybe, like you say, the way you sit, the way you are, because there's something about how they're doing it better.
yeah.
And that's really interesting because, like, if we think of it through that neurodivergent lens, that sounds very much like masking.
Mm,
And many of us like will mask for lots of different reasons. And it's interesting you saying about handwriting, because I completely remember doing a similar thing with the kind of changing the handwriting depending on the day and kind of picking what felt right. But
yeah.
then the underlying message behind that is that you're sort of sending to yourself really is that it's not okay to just be you. And
Mm,
kind of it sounds like there's a sense of not knowing who you are
mm,
underneath that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think, in some respects, you could say, well, kids do all sorts of funny things like that. But I was walking the dog earlier and I thought, do you know what? I didn't stop copying people's handwriting until I was about 20, 21.
Mhm.
And that was when I found my own handwriting,
Okay.
and I stuck
Mm.
with that. And I'm still, as far as I'm aware, it might be a slightly different iteration of that, but we don't really write much anymore, do we? But that was when I found my handwriting and I stopped copying other people's.
Mm.
So there's definitely something to that. Yeah.
Yeah, and as you say, kids will at junior school, like you say, there will be a certain amount of trying to find our own identity
Mm,
and trying to find our own style of writing or style of
mm,
dress or the way we walk, like all of those things. It's all continually evolving. But it sounds like for you that was something that really, really continued, and it's that kind of outward focus, like seeing what other people are doing and putting quite a lot of value on what other people are doing, as opposed to being okay where you are. And I'm wondering whether there was any anxiety that went along with that, or any sense of um, kind of being unsettled in that, or did that feel okay to be making those changes?
Did it feel okay? I guess I just sort of came to terms with it as something that I just do this. I just do this. And like looking back on it now, I think, wasn't that a bit embarrassing? Because if these are your friends, you know, people that you're close to, and obviously, you know, we had a friendship and I valued them as a friend. But wouldn't you think it's a bit strange that, you know, somebody's copying your handwriting? And it's like, obviously didn't bother me that they would look at that and think, that's a bit weird. And I guess, what do they say about flattery as well? So, imitation and flattery. Do you know what I mean? So they probably thought, oh, yeah, she likes the way I write, so she's taken it on as her own. Maybe they thought like that. I don't know. But yeah, and I think the fact that it changed quite often as well, there's definitely an element of being unsettled in that, because why did I keep changing as well? It's like, I don't know.
And did that continue through senior school then, in that case?
Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
it did. Yeah, yeah. And those are the books that some of those books I've kept. When I started senior school, I was writing in all this like fancy italics, we called it, because I learned that at junior school and I took it with me. And what the funny thing is when I started senior school, the kids would look at my book and my fancy writing and be showing the teacher, look at Lisa's handwriting, look at Lisa's handwriting, it's amazing, it's amazing. And I still, you know, it's not good enough. I've got to change it now to my other friends, you know, even though I actually was getting some sort of like feedback on how I'd learned to write at school, my previous school. That wasn't good enough. I still wanted to copy somebody else and, you know, move on.
Mm. Yeah, interesting. And then what happened when you were sort of, you said when you were about 20, like what do you think happened for you to feel more solid in your own, well, certainly in
Yeah.
terms of handwriting?
Funnily enough, I think that was probably at the time that I started to be a little bit less shy. I was going to say a bit less introverted, but I don't think I've ever stopped being introverted. So I think I stopped being a bit less shy. So maybe it was just like, okay, I'm finding at sort of 21, maybe I'm sort of feeling it's okay now to sort of settle into um, this is how I'm going to do things, you know. And also,
Mm.
I started living by myself, so I didn't have time to be copying people's handwriting.
Yeah, it wasn't so important anymore.
Yeah, no.
Like generally in school, how was that for you? How were your exams or your, your workload?
Um, it was perplexing to me. I think that's the best word I can use to describe school, especially secondary school, where it all starts to matter, you know. Because I had a group of friends, and as far as I was concerned, we were pretty much the same level. You know,
Mm.
we were sitting together in the form room and doing our homework, and I felt that the conversations we had around what we were learning were very at a similar level. And I felt, even though I was a bit of a last minute person, terrible, like, you know, with homework, it would be, oh, I don't know, I'd try and get into the form room like 10 minutes earlier than everybody else, just so I could do the homework that was meant to be done last night. I was very much like disorganized, last minute everything. But weirdly, what happened for me, and this is the perplexing part, is when it came to doing we had CSEs and O levels back then.
Mm.
Quite a few of my friends were like, "Oh yeah, I got seven O levels, I got eight O levels, I got this and I got that." And I got one O level. And I was looking at my friends and just thinking, what on earth happened there? We're at the same school, we're in the same group for the most part, you know, apart from choosing our options in the third year and doing slightly different subjects. Like, we're at the same school. How on earth did that happen? And that was really baffling to me. Very strange, because there were subjects that I really loved, like, science and art, but there were things like English and maths that I totally struggled with.
Mm.
Um, and this is a good example as well, I think, of maybe the ADHD like coming into play. Um, when we were given a book to read for English literature, like I remember Jane Eyre, for instance, we were given to read,
Mm.
and we would read a chapter at a time, and then we'd go back and we'd discuss it, we'd do an essay and everything. And I would have the book and I'd take it home with me, and I would sit on the sofa and I'd be like, this is my homework, got to do it, got to do it. I'd get the
Mm.
book out and I'd be like, oh, what was that? Oh, and I just kept going, having to go back to the same paragraph over and again. And if I wasn't doing that, I was nodding off. And in the end, I gave up because I couldn't focus on it. I didn't like it. I would fall asleep if I tried to read it. And I would just go back to school and just say, what happened in chapter 3? Can you tell me? Because I just can't get through it. And I literally couldn't get through it. So my essays would be like 2 paragraphs long, because
Mm.
I couldn't focus on it because I wasn't interested in it at all.
Mm. Yeah, and that's really interesting because that sort of ADHD brain, if we look at it through that lens, then with ADHD brains, we have interest-based brains. So we are fine when something is really interesting, when we're passionate about it, when we get a nice big dopamine hit from learning about it, whatever it might be. But actually, if it's something that we're just not engaged in, our brains just don't want to go there. And it can be incredibly hard for someone with ADHD to be able to get past that. And I think it's interesting also what you were saying about reading and kind of having to reread and having to go back to it. And there's those kind of working memory difficulties sometimes that come into it. So you can be reading a passage, and then by the time you get to the bottom of the paragraph, you've forgotten what was said. So you have to go back and read it.
Yeah,
Or maybe you're somebody who gets quite distracted,
yeah,
so you have all this other information coming in. So not just the information about the book and what you're reading on the page, but actually what else is going on in your environment. We have all of that coming in too. So no wonder you can't hold that information in your head. And then, of course, we need that working memory. We need to be able to hold on to that paragraph, to be able to move on to the next page, to be able to kind of make sense of stuff. Um, and often people talk about how, well, that my child, if you're talking about children, my child can read fine, they're not dyslexic or they've not got ADHD. It actually sometimes is nothing to do with that at all. It's actually to do with all the other structures around it that we then find really difficult. So no wonder that that was hard for you in those lessons, like the English lessons. That would have been a real struggle, and you probably would have been working 10 times harder than anyone else in that class.
yeah, yeah. And I think also because there just wasn't this awareness of, I suppose the teachers, I don't really know what their approach was, but I didn't get the impression that they would see somebody like me struggling. I mean, I think that, a 2 paragraph essay, which I'd often get back in red pen, it's like, this isn't long enough. I think they would just think I was being lazy. And I accepted that. Like, oh, well, I'm just lazy then, aren't I? Can't be bothered to write more than 2 paragraphs. I mean, there's just so much that goes into that. There's like the whole fact that I've struggled with the whole process, but nobody's picking up on it, are they?
Oh. Yeah. Do you remember what your school reports, what kind of things they would have said?
Lisa could try harder. She's very quiet. She knows the answers. She doesn't come forward.
Mm.
Um, yeah, everything was sort of very average. Very average, yeah.
And that sounds frustrating now that you're looking back on that and
Mm.
maybe recognizing some of what's going on, because you kind of gave yourself, and sounds like teachers gave you those labels of being lazy or
Mm.
disinterested or whatever. But actually that's not true. That's not the whole story. So is that something you carried with you through adulthood?
Um, yeah, and I think, yeah, I think because I was described as average and not trying hard enough, I don't know whether I really internalized it, because I knew that I wasn't stupid. I think that's where the confusion comes with the exam results and seeing my friends do so well. Like, we were in the same group. These are my peers. Like, we're, as far as I was concerned, I always felt as intelligent as the rest of them. So for them to sort of get these great results and go on to university and whatnot, or college and what have you, uh, I was left a little bit like, well, I don't really understand what happened.
Mm.
And maybe now I do understand a bit about, okay, maybe this is what happened, you know.
Yeah.
And you sort of feel a little bit like, that sort of understanding, looking through a neurodivergent lens, it's like, yeah, I think this makes a lot of sense now. But yeah,
And you,
sorry.
yeah, and you said earlier that looking back allowed you to be kinder to yourself. Does that feel like with those kind of years, and maybe what you told yourself around exams and around school, can you be kinder to yourself now as you sort of understand a little bit more about your brain and how it was working?
Yeah. I think that school wasn't necessarily built for my brain. And I have proven that to myself, because since I left school and got a bit more experience with life, I decided to go back into education, and I've learned other things that I'm interested in, because an adult now, you can go and learn things that you're interested in. And when I'm interested, it's different. It's night and day.
Mm. Well, that's it. The interested, passionate about it,
Yeah,
and get things done.
yeah,
And it's where you need to be.
yeah.
Whereas at school, like you say, it wasn't built for you.
No.
And I think a lot of us carry a lot of shame around those things, around those times when actually at the time we're given those labels, we're kind of we paint ourselves in a certain way, and then it's only sort of later on that you can look back and go, actually, yeah, that was really, really hard,
Mm.
and give yourself a bit of compassion for what was a really hard time. And you've proven to yourself that actually, given something you're interested in, there isn't that same barrier in place.
No, and talking of shame, actually, when you're younger and you're going for jobs and you've got your CV and you're feeling like, I don't know what the situation is now, but back then you had to put all of your grades on your CV. And the shame part came from doing that. It was very hard for me. And I actually had an interview once. I'm not sure whether it was where I actually got the job or not. I can't remember, but the director who interviewed me said something like, the biggest surprise at your interview was meeting you after I'd seen your grades at school. He said they were absolutely atrocious. And then meeting you, he said, it's like I met a different person. You don't come across as this person who, couldn't apply yourself, or, things like that. So yeah.
Oh. Yeah, that sounds really hard to be writing that, having to write that down on paper and then feeling the shame that's attached to that. And
Mm.
then people recognizing in you that actually that doesn't match up. So who you are on paper doesn't match up
Mm.
to who you are in person.
Yeah.
And that must be really frustrating to have had that experience, to not have people understand you based on that, and to maybe
Mm.
have people overlook you
Yeah.
on
Imagine
paper.
how many times that might have happened, you know. Because I've always wanted to be very honest. Like, I'm not going to fabricate. I mean, I know some people wouldn't think twice about it. They put down whatever grades they wanted to, but I've always been very honest. I'm not going to lie about something like that. But yeah, how many times was I overlooked because of how I did at school? I don't know. Not that it's, I've got no regrets, but yeah, it's interesting, really. Yeah.
So how about when it came to school? How about socially? You said how
Mm.
secondary school things became more difficult,
Mm.
and certainly we talked about the work aspect. But how
Mm.
about socially? How have you found that through the years?
I Yeah, knowing that we were going to talk about this today actually has made me do a little bit more reflection, because it's funny really, because I had a close group of friends both at junior school and at secondary school, and pretty much the same group of friends all the way through both of those times. But whilst I made very good friends, and some friends I still have today from school as well, there was an element of bullying in both schools at both times of my life. And that bullying didn't come from outside of the group, it came from inside of the group, which maybe is common, I'm not sure. And I wonder if it was something to do with my personality, which made me the target, because it wasn't happening to other people in my group. The focus wasn't going on to them. It wasn't just moving around the group and it was just, oh, it's your turn. It did seem to be focused on me, and I'm not quite sure what I can think about it from junior school, because I have this really irritating habit and there was definitely an element of perfectionism in me. And when we were like 9 or 10 and we were getting into pop music and stuff like that, if my friends were singing the wrong lyrics to a song, I'd be that really annoying kid that would go, "You do know you're singing that wrong, don't you?" It should be. So I can see how I'd be quite annoying. And actually, they did bring it up once, like, it's really annoying. And but I think in my mind, I was like thinking, well, if you're going to do something, you need to be absolutely fantastic at it. There's no point in singing a song if you're going to sing the wrong words. Obviously, now my views changed very much. I sing the wrong words to things all the time. But I think that was a really irritating thing that I used to do in junior school.
Mhm.
People very accountable for their mistakes. But that didn't happen in secondary school, as far as I'm aware. But I definitely I bore the brunt of the bullying, and I really don't know if there was just a perceived weakness about me that people would latch onto. I'm
Mm.
not sure, because it
Mm.
actually happened in my work life as well. It went on.
Oh, did it? Oh, wow. So this is a bit of a theme of you being the target of that. That sounds really
Yeah.
hard to, and I wonder how much protection you put in place
Mm.
for for that, like whether that's because lots of people do it in different ways, but whether it might be like being quite hyper vigilant to other people,
Mm.
maybe being anxious about certain things, those kind of things that often come up around
Mm.
social situations when we've been the victim of bullying.
Yeah. And I wonder even if bullying is the right label, because in some respects, I think that you were talking about hypervigilance. I think just being really sensitive. What's that word that you use about rejection?
Yeah, rejection sensitivity.
Yeah, yeah, that's the one. So it could be that, well, in some respects, that maybe somebody gave me some feedback or something in the wrong way, which I really internalized and got really upset about.
Mm.
Um, that wasn't necessarily bullying tactic. It was just people responding to me or something I'd done in a way which made me, really upset. Um,
Mm. That's really insightful. And it brings us on to rejection sensitivity because I think that's a really interesting point
mm,
to talk about, because rejection sensitivity, we don't really know if it's innate or acquired. But I
mm,
think when we look at neurodivergent people and their experiences,
yeah,
many of us have had many miscommunications, misunderstandings, kind of times when we've had rejection from people. And
mm,
it does make us really acutely aware of any rejection and even perceived rejection. So even when it's not there, we can perceive it and we can feel it, and it can send us into a really big spiral, which we can get caught in the thoughts, caught in the shame, and it can come up years and years later. Those
yeah,
kind of events and that feeling can come up years and years later. So we
yeah,
don't know whether, like, as I say, we don't know whether it's innate or whether we've just acquired it through those many times when we've had difficulties, but it sounds like for you, you're really aware now of how sensitive you were to rejection from others, how hypervigilant you were to other people.
Yeah. And in some respects, like going on from school into the workplace, by which time I probably come, it's going to be hard to say, like a master masker. Because well, I'll just maybe take you back to what happened there. When I was about 21, I was working for a company and I was doing very well. And I think that my boss felt like I wasn't pushing myself forward enough. He could see that there was this lack of confidence, although I was doing very well in my job. And he sent me on an assertiveness course, which pretty much changed my life. However, I think whilst that was really a catalyst for me moving from being somebody who was extremely shy and wouldn't speak up to me now coming forward in the world, I think also what it did teach me was these really good masking abilities, which I adopted then. Because it's like, oh, well, if I behave like this, I get a really good response from people. Behave like that, I appear to be really approachable, and people think, I was getting such good feedback from being a certain way that it became now ingrained in me. And I think that I would maybe, I don't know, I feel that there's an element of somebody maybe seeing through that who is a bit of a bully, seeing, oh, she's a bit of a people pleaser. She doesn't really know who she is inside, and whether they pick up on it, I don't know, energetically or not, I'm not really sure. But for me, I think that was a target for the bullies. And I think that the more aggressive people in the workplace would just see me as like a, a soft target. I don't know. That's how it felt sometimes.
There was something you think they recognized in you that
Mhm.
meant that you became that target again.
Yeah, I think so.
That's really hard, that pattern of people picking you out for those things and noticing those things about you. It
Yeah.
must have had quite an effect, did it, in terms
Oh,
of
hugely,
confidence?
hugely. Yeah. Um, it was like, and in some cases there was a pattern, and it wouldn't just be one job, it would happen, and it would happen in others as well. And I really did sort of think, well, what's wrong with me? What is it that I'm doing that's singling me out for this type of treatment? And when all I ever did was go out of my way to be, like 100% the best employee I could ever be in any job I did. Um, I have no idea. Very strange.
I think there's often something for neurodivergent people in the workplace where I often talk to people about this, how I think our bar that we sort of work to is we think we've got to give 100% all of the time. Like consistency means 100% all the time. And that's what we're giving to the job. And like you said earlier, it's like with the lyrics, it's like if you're going to do a job, you're going to do it properly, that kind of thing. Whereas actually, I think often in the workplace, perhaps for neurotypical people, sort of in a general sense, maybe they're working at kind of 80% capacity. But as that neurodivergent person, we're not aware of that. We're not able to pull back probably to 80% either. This is the thing. So we work at a high level, and we're also, like you say, masking, and that takes on a lot of energy, and it's exhausting. So it has quite an effect, I think. And obviously, as lots of us mask in professional settings. Um, Masking is a really good skill to be able to switch something on when you need to talk to a certain person or a certain group of people. And being able to do that is really helpful. But when you're doing it all the time, that can be really exhausting. So I wonder, I know you've talked before a little bit about kind of stress and burnout,
Mm.
and I wonder how that's shown up in your life.
Yeah. So there was a lot of job hopping going on. Um, throughout most of my working life. And there was a couple of times in 2 different jobs where and I don't know, actually, maybe you can help me with this, but I did burn out because in both of those jobs, I really reached a tipping point where I was, I just didn't want to go in. I would, either sit outside the office and go in at the very last minute, or I would get in my car at lunchtime and I would cry. And I think it was, I think I'd reached a level of stress in those jobs where I just couldn't take any more. Like, I almost gave myself an ulcer. At one place, I had to go to the doctor and he said, I think you're getting an ulcer. You've literally got to take some time off from this job. And I think a lot of it was feeling very trapped in landing in a job that I wasn't enjoying, or landing in a job that was like hugely boring. And so one of the jobs was quite stressful because my 2 team members, my 2 managers, would sit behind me and argue all day. And I very much soaked up a lot of that stress and tension from them. And then the other job that was extremely boring, I was literally just drawing straight lines on a computer for 6 months on the map for 6 months, and I would sit there and just nod off at my screen like all the time, and I catch myself doing it, and my mate next door at the computer go, Lisa, wake up. Just like, oh God, I just can't take. And like so many jobs, I would get to the point where I'm now so bored. I would run up and down the stairs to wake myself up. I'd run around the boardroom table. We had this empty boardroom that, unless it was being used, it was always empty. I'd run around the table to try and wake myself, slap myself around the face. And, and I would find that incredibly stressful, because, you want to be able to enjoy your work. You want to fall asleep at your computer, you're so bored. I had one manager call me out because he used to sit opposite me, and he would say, why are you doing it that way round today? You normally do the letters and then the envelopes. Why are you doing the envelopes first? Because I'm going to...
That's it. You needed to find a way to be able to do it differently, to have some change.
Yeah.
And
because I was being overworked. I was like, literally, the burnout came from, I literally cannot take any more because I'm just going mad.
And it sounds like you were so understimulated in that job that you had to do the running. Your body was calling out for something else, wasn't it? And so you were running around the boardroom and running up and down the stairs. But that understimulation in itself can lead to burnout. And it's an interesting concept because I think we tend to think, well, if you're doing a boring job, but actually you're just sitting there doing that, and it's not particularly taxing or whatever. But it doesn't matter. It can still be incredibly stressful for somebody whose brain needs to be doing other things, needs several types of stimulation all at once.
Absolutely.
And maybe all you needed was kind of some music on at the same time, or something else going on that would help you to be able to not necessarily focus, but just stay engaged in that. But it sounds like for you that was just far too understimulating for you. You needed more.
And then there was this pattern of in meetings as well, which was hugely embarrassing. I always found that if we had a meeting and it wasn't an interactive meeting or an interactive training, I would also fall asleep. So I got a job at a very large company, and we had this training that we had to go on. It was like an induction, and it went on for a whole week, I think maybe even 2 weeks, and we had to go into London and we had to learn about these different aspects of the business, and a lot of it was sitting around a boardroom table and just listening to somebody talk about their area of expertise. And then they would report back to our manager, how did they do on the induction? And one of them said, well, yeah, Lisa was great when she stayed awake. It's great. She just could stay awake through my presentation. I mean, how embarrassing is that? Awful. It's because I'm not, like you're talking about, it's total understimulation.
Completely. Completely, because you're not in something that's interesting you,
Mm,
and you're not being given enough to engage with. And our brains want to kind of be distracted and focus on other things. And when there is nothing else, then yeah, you're going to get sleepy.
yeah, yeah.
And so for you, that sounds, yeah, really embarrassing and really kind of,
Huge.
and I wonder whether you understood what was going on for you at that point.
Not really. No. I just thought, oh, you've obviously not getting enough sleep, or you're not making the effort to listen. And I would try all sorts of different things, like, well, maybe if I doodle, and like sometimes I would make notes. Actually, that was a good one. If I made notes, then I could, give myself something to do, give my brain something to do. Well, I'm writing down what they're saying now, which is serving several purposes because now I'll have a chance to remember it. But sometimes I would fall asleep writing. That's happened.
Mhm.
I mean, I can laugh now. I don't really have to do anything like that these days. But yeah, at the time it was just yeah, it was another thing that just think, well, why am I like this?
And you mentioned before to me that about how you kind of, as you've got older and you've found, certainly in work life, you've found the things that actually work for you.
Mm.
How has that changed things for you? Like, it sounds like you've created ways you can work with your brain and with the neurodivergence.
Yeah, yeah, because alongside my working life, I also had my special interests, and I used to this is kind of linked to what you just asked me, but it will kind of follow on to what I'm doing now. But I very much had a hyper focus. If I was interested in something, I would like do it to death. And then the trouble is when you're good at something, or your friends say, "Oh, you need to do this as a job. You need to, start a business." So how many businesses did I start? I mean, I don't know. My mum used to have uh, in her drawer, she would have all my business cards. It was like, oh, Lisa Kent, artist, Lisa Kent, jewelry maker, Lisa
Mhm.
Kent, jewelry teacher, Lisa Kent, one-to-one computer training for ladies, Lisa Kent, property investor. And it was like, there was all these business, it was just we used to really have a laugh about it, all these different things I would try. Um, and there was a time when I thought, oh, I can't stick with anything, but let's move on from that. I've tried all these things and they didn't work out as such, but I've learned so much from doing all of those things that now that I'm a virtual assistant, all those things that I spent hours learning, and like how to market yourself, and then how to start a business doing this or start a business doing that, all of this is kind of, I've absorbed it all by osmosis, all these different bits of information, and they all fit into what I do now. So all the sort of tech stuff that I love, I get to learn about new techie things all the time because all my clients use different software, and this is now created, like with what I do now, being a virtual assistant, having different clients that, yes, some of them work in very similar fields, but then some of them don't. And so now I'm working with all this variety, and I'm chopping and changing. Like my day is very much, an hour on this, an hour on that, an hour on another thing. And because I've got that sort of changing of what I'm focusing on throughout the day, it can be hard, but also it's extremely good for me. And now it's happened, it's only happened, like I've been doing virtual assistant work for a good 3 or 4 years, and then web design a few years before that. But it's very rare that I'm in front of my computer and I nod off.
Mm.
But now, if that happens, I can walk away and get a cup of tea, and I can, take the dog out for an hour. And this now works with the way that my brain works, because I've got different things to focus on, and I'm not chained to a desk, which I think that was the killer for me. That was the killer, you know.
Mm.
being told, well, you've got lunchtime here and you've got to be in at this time and blah, blah, blah. My brain sometimes doesn't work in the morning at all. I've got terrible brain fog, especially with the menopause as well. But being flexible now, I can work in the afternoon if I want. I can work in the evening if I want.
Yeah.
Nobody else's business now. I can kind of do things my way.
Mm. And that job hopping that you were talking about at the beginning and kind of doing those different things and then being an entrepreneur but trying different businesses, that's so common for ADHD people particularly, because we're just trying to find that thing. We're creating variety. There are so many ADHD entrepreneurs because actually it's what you were saying. It's like you can set your own hours, and if things don't work for you in the morning, then actually you feel like your brain's working better by the afternoon. You can do that. You can work later. You can make things work around you. And that's why, yeah, it's a lot of ADHDs have their own businesses and it works really well. But yes, that job hopping is very common. And that kind of sense of like, okay, I can't get on here, I can't get on there. So where's it going to be? And that can be quite frustrating because it's not, especially when I think when you've got friends who have kind of maybe come out of school or uni or whatever and gone on a trajectory in one
Yeah.
career and then they've stuck to it. And us ADHDers are kind of bouncing around seemingly all over the place.
Yeah.
It's great that you've found what you need to do for you now and to work with your brain instead of against it, which is what sounds like those other jobs were very much against um,
Very much.
the way you work.
Yeah.
Interestingly, also saying about when you talked about doing an hour on this job or an hour on this job and you have that variety, I think a lot of people would really struggle with that much variety and kind of changing direction that much through the day.
Mm.
But actually, for someone that has that slightly sort of hyperactive brain or the brain that needs that extra stimulation, that
Mm.
sounds really great being able to do that and being able
Yeah,
to.
and it isn't without its challenges as well. Um, like making the switch between doing one task and the next. I mean, I guess I've just got good at it over the years, I think. Because I do get in the zone. I really do get in the zone with some of the work that I do, and I have to. But getting into that zone isn't always, the easiest thing to do either. It can take a little while to switch between one headspace and another. But that's a small price to pay, really. That's and also using the timer, because I have to use the timer for my clients because I have to know how much time to bill for. But that's actually such a good tool for me, having that time, because it keeps me really focused. Knowing
Yeah,
that, well, I'm doing this work and I'm charging someone by the hour. I don't know, there's just something about that. Um, just really keeps me where I'm meant to be.
yeah, that makes so much sense. And
Yeah.
that's actually worked, even though that was something you needed for your business, which
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily about a tool for you to use in work.
No.
Actually, it's been really helpful.
It has been, yeah, it has been. Yeah, out of necessity has come something that's been a bit of a godsend, really.
Really interesting. Um, So, Lisa, I know you've got some of my Neuro Cards with you, and you've been having a look through, haven't you, to see
Wow.
what kind of traits relate to you and what things not so much.
Mm.
Um, what was that experience like doing that sorting through the different traits for you?
Well, what I think what's interesting is that the no pile, oh, that's not me, is like very slim, and then the yes, I can relate to that is like there's a lot more there. And I think the difficulty in doing that process was actually I was just like, actually, well, is that me? Is that? Am I sort of dismissing that as like, I'll give you an example. Meltdown. I'm like, I don't have meltdowns. And I'm thinking, well, do I have meltdowns? I don't know. I don't think I don't anymore. I certainly don't these days. So, and I'm sort of second guessing myself a little bit, thinking, well, am I just like putting it to the side without actually reading the back? And it was actually reading the back that helped me sort of think, okay. maybe that isn't me. But there were things that made it into the no pile, and when I read the back, I thought, oh no, that needs to be in the yes pile.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, all the traits in that card in the pack of Neuro Cards, all of the
Mm,
traits are human traits. So we'll all identify with them to certain degrees and at
mm,
certain times. And as you know, like they're not diagnostic, so it's not about figuring out, does this mean you're ADHD? Does this mean you're
yeah,
autistic?
yeah,
Whatever. It's more just a way to get you thinking, and it sounds like it has
yeah.
got you thinking about those things. You mentioned meltdowns as being something like not anymore. So does that ring true for you in the past?
I think like when I was telling you, like about the times in certain jobs where I just felt like I've had enough. I feel ill. I can't go in. That was my version of a meltdown, really, because, like one day it got so bad. I was literally thinking, my passport's at home. I've got some money in the bank. I'm just going to disappear. It got that bad.
Mm.
And that was for a company that if you said to people that and I still say it now, I used to work for this company, I'm not going to name them, but they'd be like, oh, that must have been fantastic. Wow, brilliant. Oh, I can't believe you worked for them. It was hideous. It was awful. And I don't really know exactly what made it so bad, but at the time I felt like I needed to escape. And I think that was my version of a meltdown. Whereas I don't find, as I've got older, I don't think I find myself in situations like that so much anymore. There's one card as well. Is it shutdown? Have you got a shutdown card?
Yeah, there is a shutdown card in there.
That's only happened to me. Oh yeah, here it is. Gone to bed. That's me and my mum. We're always like, if there's a problem, we go to bed.
Mm.
Um, But from a shutdown point of view, I've experienced a couple of times in my life where I've been in a social environment, um, and also had very difficult things going on in my life at the time. A few years back, my mum had dementia, and it was like, I'd say probably 2018, 2019 was like the worst time of my life, absolute worst. My best friend got married, and I remember being at this wedding. It was like a 2-day thing. And I'd been talking, to different people that I knew, didn't know, throughout these 2 days. And by the evening of the wedding reception, I literally couldn't speak anymore. I could not talk anymore. And I was sat at the end of this table. And I was just like sitting there, like just so withdrawn. It was so totally alien to me. This hadn't happened before. And I was just like, I haven't got a word to say to anybody. And fortunately for me, my partner at the time, he kind of made all the conversation for me, and I could just sit and nod, and he just kind of took over, which was really helpful. And I did thank him because I was just like, I don't know what happened. I couldn't talk anymore. And I think with hindsight now, understanding a little bit more about what's been going on all this time, I think, being around in a social environment and schmoozing for that many hours, masking, as well with people that you've never met before. So you want to make a good impression and also I'm very interested in people. I put a lot of energy into listening, and I just got exhausted. And with everything else that's going on in my life at the time, I think like that particular was like the perfect storm. I just like shut down.
Yeah, and not surprising with so much going on for you at the time anyway. That must have been exhausting. And then adding that to the social setting, like you say, that you wouldn't usually put so much energy into and you would have to mask in. No wonder there was just nothing left. And that's so common to have that sort of experience of not being able to speak for
Mm.
neurodivergent people. But even if you're not neurodivergent, that sounds like a lot to be dealing with.
Yeah. And I think as well, when you're going through a hard time, it's like even harder to smile at everybody. But that's what I was doing, and I'm accustomed to doing. Is you're not bogging people down with your trouble. You're trying to put it to the back of your mind and have a nice day. But of course, that's really taking it out of you, because now you're being all bubbly and trying to enjoy yourself. And you know that actually you're quite depleted underneath all of that. It's very hard.
Mm. But
Yeah.
it would have been hard. So it was hard for you in that environment to actually say, actually, I need to go to bed, or I need
Yeah,
to go back to
yeah,
my hotel room, whatever.
really do that. Yeah, I didn't really do that.
And that's the masking, isn't it? That's the
It's
keeping going no matter what. Mm, yeah.
yeah.
Do you have any cards there on your yes pile?
Hmm.
I'm wondering about cards like interception or alexithymia, or I'm trying
Hmm.
to think what some of the
Oh
others
yeah,
are.
I've got interception here.
Was interception on your yes pile?
Yeah,
What did you make of that?
I know that I don't drink enough water during the day, and especially when I'm really in the zone working at my computer, like video editing, for instance, which I know we do a lot of. Sometimes I forget to go to the loo, and I forget that I'm thirsty, and I'm just like, oh yeah, in a minute, I'll go in a minute or whatever, And it's just like, you know, what are you doing? Like, you needed a drink an hour ago. So I definitely um forget to do things that yeah, and also the heat and cold actually. Like sometimes I've got so cold sitting at my computer. I don't know what it is. I think when you're sort of doing a fairly sedentary job, the blood kind of rushes to your brain because you need the energy there. And like my body has gone completely freezing and I won't even realize until I've stopped working. Interesting.
Yeah, and isn't that interesting that really those signals are just suppressed in some way while you're focusing?
Yeah.
And like that's the hyper focus that we talked about earlier, where in ADHD you can get so engrossed in something and everything is about that task that you're doing. And what happens is like your needs, your internal signals are not really getting through, because we're just ignoring them, really. We're so used to sort of putting them on the back burner, thinking, yeah, later kind of thing. But actually, when you come out of that hyper focus, realizing, oh God, like I haven't been to the toilet for hours, I haven't had a drink for hours, I haven't had anything to eat, I'm
Yeah.
freezing cold. And that's a very common experience. And that difficulty in knowing whether those internal signals are what those internal signals are trying to tell us. So that's a really common experience. But again, I'm wondering about before you considered that might be something about being neurodivergent, is that something you gave any thought to, and what did you think of that?
I think that actually, before I had a lot of this awareness that I've gained recently, I maybe just thought I was really sort of haphazard, like scatty, um, messy. I think I labeled myself with a lot of things that I didn't have that understanding or that awareness there, and I certainly didn't have the level of compassion there for myself. So yeah, I would call myself all sorts of things, and I suppose laugh about it because if you don't laugh, you cry. But it's just like, well, no, I am messy. I am a this, that, and the other, and I am forgetful, and I am, and you kind of talk to yourself like that. It's not very productive, is it?
And so now when you look at it as though this is something that's really common amongst
Mm,
ADHDers, for
mm.
example, how does that feel? Does it feel any different?
Yeah, I think it's almost like in the moment now I can kind of give myself a bit more permission to feel something. Like there's a friend I spend quite a lot of time with, and I'll sometimes we'll walk into a pub and he'll say to me, do you want to sit there? Do you want to grab a menu? Do you want to drink something? Do you want to drink before we eat? Do you want to, and I'm just like, what? And what's happened is everything's come at me all at once, and I've got the dog to make sure he's all right, and I'm looking for a chair and thinking about what I'm going to drink, and I've just said now, like, do you know what, I think I'm a bit overstimulated. Just give me a second.
Mhm.
And so yeah, so little things like that now. Just that's an example, but there are other things as well. in the last few months, I've been like, oh yeah, I think that's probably due to that now, rather than me being an idiot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So you can give yourself time to just think about what's happening, like in that environment, like going for a
yeah,
meal. You
yeah,
can kind of stop and go, oh, hang on a minute, I just need a
yeah,
second.
yeah.
Which
I
is,
just need to sit down and just,
yeah. And that's the thing where you're starting to identify your needs and to be able to communicate your needs to people,
yeah,
which is a massive part of this. I think when you have that realization of the neurodivergence, you look at things in a more affirming way. And then you can start to think, oh, okay, yeah, maybe this is something that I need. And
yeah,
how can I accommodate that? And just by communicating to your friend, actually, I'm just going to sit down and then give me a second, then
yeah,
actually that's you honoring what your needs are rather than pushing through
yeah.
and feeling bad for it and feeling like you're almost attacking yourself by calling yourself sweaty or lazy, like we talked about
Exactly.
earlier, or messy or whatever it is, forgetful. Well, actually, now you can, what it sounds like is you're giving yourself that bit more compassion and that it's okay to
Yeah.
take a break, to do what you need.
Yeah, and I think because the alternative in that environment, for instance, as that as an example, would for me to be just irritated now. Was like, oh, just let me, just oh, I don't know, just get me, and I don't know, you know what I mean? I could have just got irritated because I felt so dysregulated that I couldn't. All I felt was that maybe my irritation with the overstimulation was real, that it was a real thing, and now I'm not happy. Whereas now it's like there's a pause now. There's a pause and a what is this? What is this really? Because I'm not unhappy. What is it?
Mm.
That's really helpful, actually. Yeah. So thank
Mm.
you for that.
Yes, you're welcome. It's just having that self-understanding, isn't it? And
Yeah.
it can be transformative as you can release some of those labels that you've given yourself
Yeah.
in favor of something else. And I think you don't necessarily need to be getting diagnoses and
No.
looking through assessment criteria and things like that. Like that's not always necessary. Obviously, some people might like to, and you might like to, but actually being able to just talk about these different traits in a much more generalized way, I think can be really helpful. Um, and I'm wondering about the cards, just thinking about whether there's anything else in there before we finish.
Hmm.
Um, we haven't mentioned anything to do with sensory things. Did that come up um, in
Yeah.
your looking through the cards?
Yeah. Yeah. Sensory. Um, yeah. I'm very sensitive to smells.
Mhm,
Like a smell can like ruin my day.
mhm,
Um, like if I've gone out for an evening and one of my friends has got like perfume on, I can end up, if I haven't got a headache straight away, I can almost talk myself into having a headache. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh my gosh, this smells getting right up my nose. Like I'm really going to struggle with this. And then I kind of get into a what's the word? Like really dysregulated state over it. Next thing I know, I've got a headache. But also there's this weird thing where and it makes it makes me sound like a real weirdo, but um if somebody's cooked a roast dinner in the house that I'm in and I need to go to bed and the house still smells of roast dinner, I can't sleep.
mhm,
I've got to open all the windows, the doors, I've got to let it flow through. It doesn't matter how cold it is, I've got to try and get some fresh air. I feel like totally claustrophobic with a smell like that. Whereas, I mean, I love the smell of a roast dinner, but not when I'm trying to sleep. Something about it, and I just question
mhm,
this in my mind, like, how can it change from being a pleasant thing to something that I now can't sleep and I feel sick?
mhm, mhm. And it sounds like that's really overwhelming. So when that smell is too much, is just completely overpowered. And you said it sends you into a dysregulated state as well,
Yeah,
which is really interesting.
yeah.
Because would you have said you were somebody who was sensitive to sensory inputs before?
Not really. No, I just thought it was just a quirky thing. And I think that as I'm sort of on this journey, I'm realizing that some of these are quite common traits. And as I'm realizing that and looking more into it, these things sort of start to make a bit more sense. Whereas some of these things I hadn't given them much thought. I just knew that that's me. That doesn't work for me. I know it's weird, you know. But like now, it's almost like there's sort of pennies dropping. And I think, well, if I can just get, you know, the thought of, oh my God, I'm just crazy out of the way and kind of move on to a place of more sort of curiosity, like what's this about? Then I feel like, well, you know, maybe there's something I can do about this rather than, I don't know, like it's almost like I can think about, well, how can I manage this? If it is a thing, if it is a thing, then how can I manage it rather than just almost like sweeping aside all these little sort of, what do you call them, idiocy thing, whatever the word is, and actually sort of, yeah, giving myself the permission to sort of think, well, okay, well, if I can manage certain things now that I've got this awareness, or maybe I can manage others, you know, rather than just, you know, writing it off as that's just, oh, you just have to deal with it, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing when you frame it as something weird or a bit crazy or whatever those words, quirky, when you frame it as that, and then there's that sense of like, oh, I've just got to push through, or this is weird, no
Yeah,
one else, there's that kind of implication that, well, no one else is dealing with this, so why do I have this thing
yeah,
about most dinners or about someone's perfume? But
yeah,
actually, when you recognize that, and you're given the language to explain it, I think, which is really important too. But when you can recognize, yes, this is a common trait, it's common amongst neurodivergent people,
mm,
and you are probably taking in a whole lot more of the world than you realize, and a whole lot more of the world than a neurotypical person as well. So, via your senses, there's a lot of information coming at you all the time. So, of course, it's going to feel overwhelming at times. But when you start to frame it in those terms of like, okay, this is something that is a common trait, and this is something that is difficult for me, or I find this unbearable, I find this, I get really dysregulated, you can start to think, okay, this is something I need for myself. I need to open the windows. I need to air out the bedroom before I go to bed. I need to move away from that person with the perfume, or ask them next time I see that friend, is there any chance you could, wear a different perfume or not wear so much? It might be something that might be really hard to think about, but actually that might be something that you might need to do.
yeah,
And when you frame it in that way, you can start to look after yourself a bit more and
mm,
start to identify what you need, like we talked about earlier.
yeah,
So it sounds like that's what that's enabled you to do a little bit.
yeah. I'd say that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as the understanding comes, so does the kind of management.
Yes. And also with sensory things, many late diagnosed neurodivergent people have suppressed their sensory sensitivities
Mhm.
and written them off as weird or whatever, but also tried to push through, maybe feeling it's not something that is legitimate.
Mm,
And just over the years of just pushing that way and pushing that away, we actually numb ourselves to a lot of things. And it's not until you start to uncover this and start to recognize those needs and be kinder to yourself that there is this sense of like, oh yeah, actually I've been going around having to deal with this, like a massive amount of noise or massive amount of dysregulation, and I've just been pushing through this whole time and ignoring it. Whereas when we can pay attention to it,
mm.
then we can start to accommodate, be kinder, put things in place that we need for ourselves,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
which can be really so helpful.
definitely. Yeah, yeah. It's like I'm not asking everybody to sort of, you know, bend to me. It's like I can sort of take accountability for it because I understand it better now. I can ask if I need help or assistance, but there's a lot I think is quite empowering, is what I'm saying. There's a lot I can do myself with this information, with this knowledge, and with these different feelings as well. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it is empowering. And I think having that information, having the language to explain yourself, being able to research and sort of speak to other neurodivergent people and all of those things could be so helpful to release a lot of the shame that we've spoken about too. Mm. Okay. So does that feel all right to leave there today?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it. Yeah, it's been very interesting. Yeah,
Mm.
definitely.
Thank you so much for sharing, because I know how difficult that can be sometimes, and I appreciate you giving your time for this. But yeah, I hope it's been helpful, and I think it will be helpful to other people as well.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. If they can feel a little bit less sort of weirded out by themselves, that's a good thing.
Definitely, definitely a good thing. Thanks, Lisa.
Yes.
So I hope you found that session with Lisa helpful. If you've got any questions, please do put them in the comments. If you're interested in my Neuro Cards, they're available on my website, newgladecounselling.co.uk. And we also have training on there as well for different professionals working with neurodivergence, as well as parents who may want some help parenting neurodivergent children. I also have a book out in early 2026, and this is for counsellors and therapists and coaches. And it's a comprehensive guide to working with neurodivergent clients with practical applications of neurodivergent affirming therapy. Thanks so much for joining us today.